Welcome to the Nerd Party.
I think people are perverts.
I've maintained that. That's the foundation of my career.
Welcome to the House of Fincher, the podcast on the Nerd Party Network, where we go through all of David Fincher's filmography in chronological release order. I'm your host for today, Brandon Shea Mutella, and I've got two wonderful guests joining me, as always, John Mills and Tristan Riddell. John, how are you doing today?
Well, I have this crazy theory, okay? I'm going to cross-reference my K's, and then I'm going to take this little crosshair symbol, which could be the beginning of a film strip, but it might actually have to do with a watch. And I'm going to cross-reference all of these things, and I'm going to get handwriting samples from the two of you, and I'm going to write a book about it.
Awesome. I love it. I will not be providing you with any type of hand samples
Suspicious.
whatsoever.
Very suspicious, yes. Brandon.
Tristan, how are you doing?
Well, I wouldn't tell you, even if I was feeling good.
Oh, well, but I really want to know.
Are you?
I'm doing I'm actually doing quite well now that we're recording. I think this is something that I look forward to every single time that we record, and it's so much fun going through these movies. And Zodiac is such an interesting film to talk about. So many aspects of it are unique, while at the same time beguiling.
Yes. Well, let's jump in right with our normal question of when did you first encounter this film? Tristan, we'll start with you this time. When was the first time you saw Zodiac?
We're getting to the time in my life where I watched this right when it came out. Like right when Fincher released this. Like this was at the time in my life when I was just like, yes, I am a Fincher fan. I am going to watch this movie as soon as I can. And I didn't see it in the theater, but I did. I bought it as soon as the director's cut came out, and I think I borrowed it from a friend as soon as the first Blu-ray came out. And because it was weird, because when the first Blu-ray came out, they didn't release that many. That like the circulation was really, really low when the first Blu-ray came out, and so it was actually. I remember seeing it at a shop. It was a third hand. It was like a thrift store or something like that, and it was $100 for the first Blu-ray because it was so sought after, because they made so few, and Fincher's such a master that people wanted it. But then they did a couple years later, they did a re-release, and then the director's cut came out, and then they realized that they screwed up the first time, and so they mass produced it on a bigger scale. But yeah, I had to borrow it from a friend. When the first Blu-ray came out. And it was I think I watched it pretty quickly as soon as I didn't see it in the theater, but I saw it pretty quickly. So it is funny because every other film I feel like of Fincher's was always just like, oh, I got to this when it, later once it was out for a little bit, or I stumbled upon it. But Zodiac, I'm finally meeting in the middle with the timeline.
John, how about you?
Well, we had moved on to our second child by this point, so I did not see Zodiac in the theater. I was learning to live without sleep and winding up looking like Robert Graysmith at the end of the film. But I can say that this was one that immediately piqued my interest. Okay, just to give some background, I gave you all great tidbits last week, but my brother, when he went to college actually for criminology, and both he and I have a passion for serial killers. We enjoy the topic, and we enjoy, discussing them and looking at the case files and stuff like that. And it's actually an odd bonding experience with, between two brothers sort of thing, because we saw Silence of the Lambs in the theater together. And so it was like, oh, wow, that's really based on Ed Gein, who's the same guy that based, Texas Chainsaw Massacre on and stuff like that. So we really sort of it's in the blood. So this film is right down my alley in terms of subject matter. Like, I am on board for this. I believe that my first encounter with it would have been renting it on home video, probably seeing the theatrical cut, because I've been racking my brain knowing this question was coming and just really rethinking. I doubt the first version I saw was the director's cut, because I can't form a specific memory, but my recollection is the first time I saw it, I said, that was good. I liked that. And then when I saw it the second time, it was, oh, this is a different experience. I like this much more. And I've also always been the type where you slap director's cut on something and I'll say, oh, okay, I got to see that version because that's the director's preferred version. Mm-hmm. And since I won't watch any other version than the director's cut, but it's one of those things where I'm fairly certain that my wife was not as entranced with the film as I was when we first saw it. And I doubt that she would remain entranced with it as I do at this point.
Interesting. Yeah, the first time I saw this, I saw it at the Cheap Theater here in Regina, so our Rainbow Cinemas. And I went in, I was excited. This is right at the peak of my David Fincher fandom. I went into this movie and I walked out thinking that was the biggest flaming pile of trash I had ever seen in my life. And I absolutely hated this movie, and I stayed away from it for a very long time. I did not want to go back to it. And I didn't see it again until I picked up the 2-disc HD DVD director's cut edition, which I still have. And it's still the one. So if you go to my Twitter account, you can see the tweet that I have. And the cover was really cool because it was like the cover of the first envelope that you see in the movie. So it was like handwritten, like the envelope. And I watched it again and completely fell in love with the film. So I don't know if it's because of the difference between the theatrical and the director's cut. I don't know if it was because of the distance. I don't think I've said on this podcast, but I've had a few movies where I watched them once and I'm like, it's really bad. But then I sit and think about them. Like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood I saw recently, and I'm like, I didn't like it, but I couldn't stop thinking about it for a day or two. And, Hateful Eight was another one where I didn't like it, but then I thought about it. True Grit, the remake, I saw it in theaters and I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And I think this is kind of like that, where it just kind of grew on me and I thought about it more and more. But I needed that gap in between my viewings, or I needed the director's cut. So, and now I love it. And tipping my hand, this is my favorite Fincher film.
Oh,
I could see that. I could definitely see that. But the thing is, I think that the term director's cut has become used and abused very much so lately, where even things that are really extended cuts, or the director's cut is almost a gimmick at this point. It's as interchangeable as when you see extended edition or something like that.
Special edition.
Well, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other, right? And it's like, it's one of those things, though, where David Fincher is the type of director where if you say this is his preferred version, I'm going to pay a lot more attention, because I know David Fincher's work and I know his personality well enough by this point that I know, oh, somebody released a version that he wasn't this wasn't the version he wanted to release for whatever reason. Of course I'm going to pay attention to him when he says, no, this is the version I wanted. Yeah, that's obviously, I don't know why at this point they would ever release any other version than the director's cut, because I think by this point, Fincher is enough of a name, whether it was, Tristan, you might have more insight on this. I don't have all of this same sort of like deep dive history, but if they were like blanching at the runtime or something like that, nowadays it's like, oh, hey, a 2 hour and 42 minute David Fincher. Oh, okay. All right. It's a short one. Cool.
That's a walk in the park.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's short time is definitely a thing. You want to get as close to 2 hours as possible just so you can pack in as many showings as possible at the theater. That's really all it is. It's not even what the story merits. It's not even what your bladder can handle. It's all just so you can get as many showings in one day at the cinemas as possible. It's just a money decision. And I'm not trying to sound like some sort of godless commie. I'm just saying that it's just a pure money decision to get as close to 2 hours as possible.
I'm just wondering if you've ever made it through a showing of this with how much rain occurs in the latter half of this movie. Have you ever made it through without a bathroom break?
I did last time. I did 2 days ago. I was very proud of myself. And also I remember it now. It came back to me as to when I first saw this. I was living in Los Angeles when I saw this, and I was actually working for Ridley Scott at the time, and I was working on some post-production for American Gangster, and the same person who shot American Gangster shot Zodiac, and so I went to my school. They had a huge library at my school. They had a huge DVD library where you could just take out whatever you wanted. And like I hadn't seen, like at that time it was fall of 2007, and I hadn't seen Zodiac yet, and that's where I got it. That's why I didn't I borrowed it from the library, not a friend. And because it was one thing, I was just like, oh, that's right, the same guy shot it. Like, I haven't seen this Fincher thing. Like, let's watch this. And so you'd think I'd remember that, but I remember just being surrounded by movies, like walking into like this huge closet. I was just like, yes.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned American Gangster, because I think that is a movie that, much like Zodiac, a lot of people sleep on it. And it's one of those things where American Gangster is a movie that I walked around and I was like, no, you got to see this. You got to see this. This is really, really good. And as an added bonus, it was on one of the whatever free cable channel when our second child was still, up in the middle of the night sort of stuff, feeding with a bottle sort of thing. I watched American Gangster so many times on cable. Like, I have that movie memorized. And just the fact that they do look so similar, it's very interesting because they really seem of the same sort of they're in the same sort of mindset family of like retelling real history from the point of view of, the people that wrote their perspective out about it. And so the two movies feel very much of the same blood. So it makes sense that the director of photography would have been the same, because they're evoking the same era.
Absolutely. I never really thought of it that way. I think that's pretty astute, John.
I haven't seen that movie. I haven't seen American Gangster.
You should, and not just because I worked on the distribution.
What's interesting though is, and I know that this is a rabbit hole, but like American Gangster is one where I'm very torn about the theatrical versus the director's cut, because there's an extra bit at the end of the director's cut where it's like the ending of the theatrical version is pretty much perfect. But then the ending of the director's cut, it feels like the movie goes on a little bit too long, but then it still has this really satisfying final moment. So I think that's one where you could really go back and forth between theatrical and director's cut on those.
So with this movie here, with Zodiac, I think for me, part of the reason why I didn't like it the first time was something that John was saying earlier. And I like serial killers. I like, violence and gore and that kind of thing. And going into this kind of movie, that's what I was expecting. And we really don't get that with this movie. And that is not at all what this movie is about. I mean, we come into this movie, there's 2 deaths have already happened off screen, right? Prior to anything. We get our first 2 deaths at the beginning, and then like another attack. And then that's really all that we get from the killer. And over time, what I've come to realize about this film, and what makes it really interesting to me, is that the film is not about Zodiac. It's about people's fascination and how they can become obsessed with the mysteries that are around this case, and how these mysteries can eat at you and gnaw at you, because at the end of the day, Zodiac is just a person. But all of this mythology has kind of been built up around him, and there's all these tangential, weeds and roots that are coming out of the main problem that are taking people in all these different directions, and that's what makes them become obsessed with the case and obsessed with trying to find out who the Zodiac was. And it's really a movie about obsession.
Yeah, no, I think that's spot on, and I think that but I think what's really, really interesting, and I think that's something that Fincher brings, and when we get to Mindhunter later, I think that this is also an aspect, is I think that there's a fascination on Fincher's part with the process that goes behind trying to find these people. and exposing, in a sense, the layers of bureaucracy and how they work, because we all have this very romanticized vision of, the hard-nosed detective, that he's going to get through it just with enough moxie, and he's going to get out there and he's going to gumshoe it, and then he's going to find out exactly who it is. And instead, this seems to be a very purposeful examination of why somebody like Zodiac can get away with it, and why it's so hard to crack these sorts of cases, and why later, as they started coming up with those behavioral science units that were dedicated to it, why it was so much more, why they were able to formulate so many things. Like Zodiac winds up, in a sense, contributing to, the motivation to be able to say, okay, people like this are out there, and we have to figure out how to crack that nut and get them to come to us. What are the similarities between X, Y, and Z? What motivates them? What brings them to bear? And so Zodiac, even though technically never caught, winds up, being that, one of those guideposts of, okay, what did we find out from him along the way?
Mm-hmm. I love what you brought up about bureaucracy, because I love the scene with Anthony Edwards where he's on the phone with all the different cities, and he's like, okay, well, if you send us the footprints, we'll send you the fingerprints. He's like, okay, well, we'll fax it to you. Well, we don't have a fax machine. Okay, well, you'll have to talk to Vallejo. It just goes on and on. He has to. They're in everybody's backyard. Everybody has their own jurisdiction. And when you have a serial killer that goes all over Southern California and Northern California, it's just a logistical nightmare. And Fincher found a way to make that entertaining.
Yeah. And you almost wonder if his experience with Seven, which is a much more straightforward detective movie, winds up playing into his desire to examine the way that it really works. Seven is a, and I don't mean to offer this as a pejorative or anything, but it's essentially a fantasy film, right? Bad guy, chase bad guy, and it's exactly that sort of like gumshoe detective sort of thing. And so you see, I would say that you could almost look at Zodiac as Fincher returning to material that was interesting to him to begin with, but approaching it from a more mature angle and saying, no, I'm going to make you understand the real world version of if we were going after John Doe, and why John Doe would probably get away with it.
Well, the writer and producers wanted Fincher to make the film, but they didn't think that they'd ever get him because he did Seven. They're like, oh, he did Seven, he's going to have no interest in Zodiac. And they sent it to him just because they, wanted to shoot their shot. And he's like, oh, well, I was going to do the Black Dahlia, but that fell through. So this feels like a great substitute. So John, even though if Black Dahlia didn't fall through, he wouldn't have done Zodiac, but he was looking for that picture of the real life murder story to contrast Seven. So that was very much his wheelhouse. He wanted to do that. And cool. It's interesting that you put it that way.
Yeah, accidental too. Okay, cool.
And it's fascinating how this is probably the pivotal point in his career, right? Because I think this movie takes him to where he is now, right? Obviously,
yes,
this is clearly where he's going, and this is a pivotal change in his career. His movies kind of take a different tone. Yes, we got a couple of interesting movies coming up next, the next two specifically, but after that, there's a very interesting tonal shift, and I think this set him on that path. And we end up with Mindhunter, which is clearly an answer to this movie.
Mindhunter was very much influenced by Zodiac. I mean, 100%. I can't remember if Fincher said this or if people close to him said this or people who worked on it said this, where they worked on Zodiac and then they went to work on Mindhunter and they're like, okay, what worked in Zodiac and what didn't? Whatever didn't work, let's get rid of it. Whatever worked, let's put it in Mindhunter. And so when you compare and contrast the two pieces of work, especially season 1 of Mindhunter, it's so engaging and it's it's so reminiscent of Zodiac, but it's just like, oh wait, I enjoy this more because of X, Y, and Z. Because as great as Zodiac is, and as so manicured and composited, and it's just a mastercraft of construction. There are things that don't work. There are things that drag. There are things that, like most movies, that just like aren't firing on all cylinders. But when you look at Mindhunter, you're like, oh, this is what Fincher was able to accomplish after a learning experience with Zodiac, in my opinion.
I would be interested to know, what you think does not work and where you think it drags.
I think with Zodiac, it was, when you go to my own personal experience, this was a movie that every single time I watch it, I feel the exact same every single time, where I don't like it less, I don't like it more. It's just even keeled. It is put together fantastically. It is well acted. It is well edited. It's well produced. It's well written. But for some reason, I am just never on fire about this film. I'm never excited to watch Zodiac. And after I watch it, I'm never like, yes. It's like, I don't get that after I watch Seven or Fight Club. Zodiac is just like, wow, that's a good movie. That's a good movie. Okay, well, let's go pick up the baby. It's something that I think it's ineffable. It's missing a spark. I think it's because it's so true to what happened, and it's true to the feeling of real police work. It's true to the feeling of real obsession. It's true to the feeling of a collective consciousness of anxiety and fear. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why. I think Zodiac is a perfect movie of a soccer game, where when you look at good soccer, and I know some people are rolling their eyes right now, but a good soccer game is all about the anticipation of something to happen. It's not about getting the goal. It's not about kicking it home. It's not about getting it past the keeper. It's all about, okay, all right. It's all about what might happen. And I feel like that's what Zodiac is. It's it's 2 hours and 42 minutes of, oh my God, this might happen. And it doesn't, and I think that's the beauty and the problem with it, because there's all this build and no real payoff. And I know that you guys are chomping at the bit to chime in. But all I'm saying is that, like, yes, I know it was constructed that way. I know it was crafted that way. I'm not saying that this is something that they failed. I'm saying that they very much sought out to do this, and they succeeded. And just, John, like how when you were talking about Panic Room the other day, how you said that Panic Room is a movie where it doesn't really say anything. It's just an action piece. And so it has a top level rating for you. It has a top level of enjoyment. That's kind of how it is with me and Zodiac, where it's well constructed, well crafted, great performances, but it has build. It's continual build with no payoff. Continual build, no payoff. Continual build, no payoff. And that's why it has a shelf, in my opinion.
I get what you're saying. I disagree that there's no payoff. And where I rather look at Zodiac, my counterpoint to that would be is that, yes, there is this build, and there's no traditional crescendo at the end. There's no big payoff of him sticking his finger in Alan's face and saying, I knew it, you're the Zodiac, right? It's more of I think that the payoff is the fact of going through and finding out how the adrenaline of the hunt becomes its own drug. And so you have somebody fall by the wayside to alcoholism. You have other people fall by the wayside to burnout, and then you have somebody else destroy his life pretty much because he just can't get enough of it. He can't let it go. And I think the culmination, the payoff, is actually when he does have that moment of confrontation, semi-confrontation in the hardware store, and he suddenly realizes in that moment, what the hell did I think I was going to do anyway? right? You find out that for all of the work that he's put into it, for all of the sleuthing, for all of that stuff, he entertained up until that final moment that he was going to be the hero that was going to swing in and prove them all wrong and get the accolades or whatever. And instead, it's a moment of, I still can't get rid of him. I still can't take him down. All I can do is stand here and look at him and wonder if he knows what my eyes are saying right now. That we know each other and I know who he really is. Mm-hmm. And then you have the denouement where, the first victim comes in and IDs the photograph. I think that is the payoff, is realizing that you get so addicted to the hunt and the adrenaline that you don't know what your end game is. And if he at any point sat down and said, like, would he have wound up in the basement of a stranger's house in a creepy environment with a bunch of old film canisters and sounding like somebody is upstairs if he stopped for 1 second and thought, what am I doing here? Mm-hmm. What's my end game?
Yeah, I agree with you what you're saying there, John. For me, this is the most frightening movie I have ever watched, and this movie messes me up every time I watch it. And that's why I come back to it, because not many movies make me feel that way. And the reason why is because it's based on reality. And as much as I watch Alien, as much as I watch, those scary types of movies, like, to me, those will never happen. Therefore, I never quite get as scared as I can. With this having happened, this is something that has happened, I find it truly frightening. And, all those tangents, all those things, like with him getting into that basement of that guy with the film, like they were hinging so hard on the writing. And it took him in a completely different direction, and it took him into a different frightening area. And, you do get that payoff. I agree. We have that payoff at the end. And the way that I interpret the movie is that they did realize when they were looking at each other in the hardware store, they both knew who they were looking at when that happened. Mm-hmm. And they both knew what each other knew, but there was nothing that could be done about it. So to me, that is a satisfying end in and of itself, because Alan knows that he's caught, right? He knows that this person knows without a doubt by looking at him. So yeah, this movie just completely messes me up every time I watch it, and I love how it does. I love how it makes me feel every single time I watch it.
I'm with you, and for me, this is a film where every time I come into it, I say, okay, this is almost 3 hours. I'll just watch a little bit at a time, because, you got the different things. I would love to watch a 3-hour film, sit down and just watch it from beginning to finish. But my life, such as it is, I know that that's not necessarily going to happen. So I go into it realistically, but this is one of those ones where no matter when I start it, all of a sudden I blink and an hour has passed. And I say, oh, well, okay, I might as well just keep on going with this then. Of course I get interrupted anyway, but this movie this flows so incredibly well. And I think, Brandon, you said how this is a pivot point to his later stuff. I do think that this is, and I think we all agree, but now more than ever, watching it this time, I said, this is the final solidification of his style. Mm-hmm. This is, everything up to this point has been him in formation. And then this is David Fincher from this point forward, is how I see it.
This film, speaking of which, because we all know that David Fincher has become the digital filmmaking master. Like, you want to know how to shoot on digital, you talk to David Fincher. You want to look at someone who's pushing the boundaries on digital filmmaking, it's always been David Fincher since 2007. This movie, Zodiac, was the first movie to ever be shot on an HD direct to hard drive uncompressed footage. This is HD 444 sampling raw video, and that's the first time it's ever happened. Now notice I didn't say first digital film ever,
right,
because that's not the case, but this is the first uncompressed HD straight to to hard drive. And because most of the time beforehand it was compressed. If it was to a hard drive, it was compressed, and so you got a highly artifact and not great image, kind of like how episode 2 was shot, or you have something that was shot directly to tape, like Collateral was shot
right
by Michael Mann. This one was raw image to the sensor, no generation loss whatsoever, and there was a lot of scenes, it was shot with the Viper camera, and it was actually edited on Final Cut, which is so funny because it wasn't one of the first edited on Final Cut, but not too many people were doing it. I mean, you had from 2002 to 2007 at the time that this was made, a handful of films, major motion pictures, I should say, were actually edited on Final Cut. And one thing that Fincher and the DP really liked about this camera and this method of shooting was that they could use a lot of practical lights. So in the basement, that was all practical lighting. And they could, in darkness, they could push the sensor to the limit. They wanted to see how much they could push the limit of the sensor, how little lights they could use or how less lighting they could use. Now that I'm older and more of a professional than I was in 2007, in those opening scenes, you can really, really tell, oof, they pushed the sensor a little too much with some of the artifacting and some of the banding and everything like that. You could tell they pushed the exposure line in Final Cut a little bit too much past to 100%. But between Panic Room and Zodiac, there was a 5-year gap. Mm-hmm. But in those 5 years, Fincher didn't, he wasn't just sitting on his hands or twiddling his thumbs or anything like that. He was shooting music video. I think he shot one music video and he shot a whole bunch of commercials. In some of those commercials, he shot with the Viper to see if it could be done for a major motion picture, and it could. And the same DP that he shot Zodiac with, he shot that commercial with, and he's like, let's do a movie. And that's how it got made. And ever since then, Fincher has been doing digital. Now, some of the scenes, I think some of the slow motion scenes were shot in film with Zodiac. I read that. I haven't confirmed it. And Benjamin Button was a mixture of film and digital, but he does it in such a way where you can hardly tell. And so, from this point on, just to echo what you guys are saying, this was the point of no return. This was David Fincher finding his style, finding digital, and loving it until modern day.
I love you mentioned the lighting because that scene in the basement, I always go back to it. That is the scene for me in this because, Brandon, you talk about the tension. I can't watch that thing without just feeling like a tightness in my chest and my palms getting sweaty because it's played so perfectly with the lighting. And there's one moment where Charles Fleischer, that was his last name, right? Roger Rabbit. It's the guy who played Roger Rabbit, or did the voice for him at least. When he moves out under the light at one point and his face just turns into this completely blank black mask, it is one of the most tense moments I've ever seen on film, and it still gets me to this day because I don't know whether it taps into some sort of thing where when I was a kid and we had a basement, with the creepy, exposed bulbs just hanging from the ceiling sort of thing used to terrify me. I couldn't turn my back on the basement. I would just run up the steps 100% of the time. And so that the way that Gyllenhaal plays it and the way that they use the lighting in that scene is so amazing. And it just having it culminate with, it still makes me jump when he's trying to get out. And I'm sitting there, I'm saying, dummy, you saw him lock the door. What do you think? Come on. You saw him lock the door. But then when he comes up behind him and you see his reflection in the mirror, but not him. So it creates this weird depth, play with depth that goes on. And it's just I just jump every single time watching that. And I think it is all because of the fact that they were able to use so much of the lighting to their advantage in that scene. I don't think that scene plays as well if they don't play with the lighting as much as they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting because it's not just dark. Like we have lots and lots of really bright sequences as well, right? Like the murder on the beach, right, at the lake, full daylight and everything like that. And they're going all over the place with the style of this film. Like he's not trying to create one specific mood. He's trying to make as realistic an environment as possible while making this film.
That was the most terrifying scene to me.
Yeah,
was
me too.
At the
That's
lake.
the one. Yeah.
And you said like he's trying to make it as realistic as possible. In that scene at the lake, that's actually where the stabbing took place.
Mm-hmm.
And Fincher drove in trees and planted trees because that's how it looked in the 60s. And in modern day, the trees were gone. And that's how realistic he wanted it to be. Mm-hmm. Is that the freaking guy planted trees in order to make
I'm not being cheeky with this, but I almost wonder if those trees were uprooted so that they could be like, okay, nobody can sneak up anymore. Because I mean, an event like that is going to leave a psychological scar for a generation. Mm. There are places that carry their own sort of ghosts with everything. But to pile on with that, I'm sure that Fincher pulled up as many aerial photographs as he could and made sure that those trees were at the exact latitude and longitudinal places that they were at that time. And probably one of them's off by like 2 centimeters. And he's sitting there thinking to himself, I could have gotten that right. So
it's just one of those directors. Got to get the trees right.
Yeah.
It's almost like the psychosis of Kubrick and the details.
But see, I mean, the thing is, there's also, though, like every time I watch one of these things where they deal with the way things were and the way the Zodiac operated or the way that Manson family operated or any of those sorts of things, it's interesting because, I just talked about, the psychological scars that are left. It's so much different now because these things undoubtedly happened before we were aware of them in this way. I'll make reference again to Ed Gein. Ed Gein was a fully active serial killer building a skin suit who probably murdered his own brother when he was 10 and started a fire to mask it. And we go back, there's no way Ed Gein was the first person doing these sorts of things. And so there comes with it this awareness, and it's always, I think, this interesting back and forth psychologically with society where once we become aware of the thing that was always in the dark, we jump at every shadow sort of thing. And I think that's where I look back at this sort of movie and I sit there and, in the car, in the very beginning, the car drives up and stops behind them and then drives off. And I'm sitting there saying, why aren't you turning the car on and just like gunning it and getting the hell out of there? Like, leave. Why are you still sitting there? Oh, no. And now it's coming back. And what's going on? I'm already a ghost. There is a dust trail a mile long, and I am back hiding out with everybody saying you have no idea the creepy thing that just happened. And I just don't know if it's that same sort of vibe that Manson was able to take advantage of a much more open and relaxed society, not anticipating this sort of monstrous behavior being there. And so the monsters are able to just move around, and it's sort of a salad days for them because there's nobody that's acting with any sort of awareness about them.
Mm-hmm. I think you're right about that. I think that's definitely the situation. Late 60s is when, the murders in the car happened. And it's a different time, this is a time when doors aren't locked at home, and people aren't expecting this kind of thing because it's so heinous, it's not, these types of things are not brought to the attention. I wouldn't be afraid to say that probably not that police weren't doing their job, but these type of investigations weren't able to bring up these types of things. And then with other killers, I think there is some aspect to it where there's killers learning what other killers and wanting to amplify it to the next level as well.
Well, there's also, and I think it could only ever be anecdotal sort of thing, but I remember reading an article not too long ago that was really interesting that put forth the idea, and of course it's unprovable, but put forth the idea that we're all aware that we live in the era where a mass killing can happen. And it seems that it can happen from time to time. And there is a line of thought that because we are in so much more of a surveillance state and people are so aware that they're on camera 15 times a day at a minimum, that there are red light cameras everywhere, that people are more aware that people are watching, that people with these sort of underlying serial killer tendencies are kept under tighter. They're more aware of the fact that they can't operate in the shadow the way that these guys did. And as a result, it just becomes a pressure cooker. And so the big event happens, whereas these people, you roll the tape back like 50 or 60 years, would have been operating with the occasional one-off here and there that wouldn't have necessarily been pieced together by the cops sort of thing. I have no idea. I'm not a professional. It was just a very interesting article to have read.
It's a scary thought.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. So Tristan, with this film, you're like, I get to this one level and I never change from that level. Like, what do you think it is that keeps it at that level for you? Is it too slow for you? Is it too long for you? What do you think it is about the movie that just kind of keeps it there for you?
I think, I mean, I droned on for a long time where you guys were just shaking your heads, saying, no, he is wrong. No, I think what I said was kind of how I feel. It's just, it's a lot of build and not enough payoff. I know I phrased it as no payoff and you guys took me literally. I'd like to change that to not enough payoff because I know what the payoff is. And I find that, I found that a cool scene where, Gyllenhaal went to Lee, or Drew Carey's brother in the Drew Carey Show, as I refer to him.
Yep.
And no, I get that that's a payoff, but just I think that's what it is. I think it's just it's not enough payoff, and it's hard to do with real stories. It's kind of like season 2 of Mindhunter, where they spend 5 episodes in Atlanta.
Oh, don't tell John hasn't seen it yet.
Oh no, I've seen season 2.
Oh, have you? Okay, last time we talked,
I'm sorry. I did take quick steps to correct that. Yes.
Okay.
Well, I won't spoil anything, but it's just there are certain aspects. Like if you want to stay true to the real story, not every story has a happy ending. And I'm not saying that Fincher's known for his happy endings. Oh my God, no. I'm just saying that like not every real life story can be tied up with a bow. Not every story has build with, oh wow, what a cathartic payoff. I mean, not everything is that way, and Zodiac is very much not one of those stories. And I think that's probably it. It's just it's a lot of build with not enough payoff for me personally.
Well, I guess what I meant that I was asking there is, without changing the ending because he wanted to keep it true to form, is there something that could have changed in the film that would have made it different for you, a different experience? Would editing have made a difference to you, or something like that? I guess is what I'm asking.
I think it's hard because this story takes place over the course of 3 decades. That's an intense story. And so it's kind of hard. It's a little obtuse of me to say, oh, it needs to be edited down, or it needs to be cut down, or it needs to be trimmer, it needs to be slimmer, it needs to be thinner. Because you go from 1969 to 83, I think. And so it's like I said, it's hard to say like, oh, well, if you're going to span 14 years, you should really try to get that under the 2-hour mark. I mean, I don't mind long movies. And I just think that there was a lot of moments where it just has like oh my gosh, like we got our guy, here we go, here's that rush, here's that anticipation, we're going to do it. And oh, it's not him. Or, okay, well, let's go on to the next one. Here's that rush. We're getting the facts. We're getting there. And then, oh, it's not him. And then we do that multiple times. And I think that's the thing, is that it's, if you kind of tie that up tighter and don't repeat yourself so much, you choose those moments wisely where you have, where don't build to no payoff continually, choose your moments a little bit wiser. I mean, I feel like I'm being put on the spot a little bit here. But no, I mean, I can't give you a definitive answer is all that I'm saying.
Well, I mean, you should be put on the spot, but aside from that, I would say I would have to ask, do you think that it's possible that for somebody who knows the history of the Zodiac killings and those sorts of things, me basically, or my brother, do you think that one of us coming into this with the full knowledge of the fact that there's no real satisfying resolution to anything, do you think that that plays into my own satisfaction with the movie? Because I know that there's not going to be any sort of resolution, and I'm just along for the ride, knowing full well that at the end of this they're going to be like, and nobody went to prison. Sort of thing.
For me, I don't think that's the case because I don't never studied serial killers or anything like that, so I don't know anything about them. So going into this movie, the first time I didn't like it, but when I watched it again the second time, I didn't remember anything about it. So the ending of him not getting caught was still a surprise to me, and yet that second time really blew me out of the water with my enjoyment of it.
Okay. No, I mean, that's fair. It's just, I guess it just becomes a matter of taste then. Because I think, Tristan, if I'm interpreting you correctly, you're saying you don't have a problem necessarily with the build and no, tied in a bow resolution. You have a problem with the fact that so many times it builds. And you would have preferred maybe one or two fewer times of the build. Whereas for me, that rush is part of the dynamic that makes the film so compelling, is that you can understand why Graysmith got addicted to it, because he kept having that maddening moment of, oh, I almost got it. Okay, I got to try again, sort of thing. Because he mentions in the beginning that he's a puzzle guy. He loves putting puzzles together. And so this is exactly the sort of thing that's going to appeal to his personality type of, I just got to put the puzzle together right. And, if I get it wrong this time, okay, well, I'll just try again this time, sort of thing.
What did you guys think of Gyllenhaal?
I think he's perfect. I think he's perfect in the film. Like, I don't know him much outside of this. I haven't seen a lot of movies with him in it. But I think the tone of him and the way that he speaks, the way that he acts, I think he's perfect for this type of character. And yeah, I love him.
I think that Jake Gyllenhaal is a very underrated actor in terms of his physicality. I think that he brings this weird sort of vibe with his performances where it's so trite to say, like, I forget that it's him, but he seems to find a way to bring a different body language with his characters. And I think that works really well here, because by the end of it, his motion, like I look at him, he looks very desiccated and his eyes are very dark, and I can see a physical transformation. And yes, I know a lot of that has to do with the way that it's shot and the makeup and stuff like that, but none of it ever feels artificial with him. I feel like I'm looking at a real person existing.
Yeah, he's an extremely versatile actor, and he can be funny, he can be dramatic, he can be serious, he can even be violent if he needs to, if the role calls for it. And how he got the job, or at least how Fincher got hip to him, was Fincher was having a conversation with Jennifer Aniston about the movie, and he's like, who's some of the who are some of the nicest people that you've worked with, or like, who are some of your favorite co-stars? And she said Mark Ruffalo and Jake Gyllenhaal. And he's like, okay, sweet, I'll go talk to them. And so he went and talked to them and then got them in the movie. Because with Zodiac, I don't know the motivations behind this, but he was very much, Fincher wanted to surround himself with nice people. And that was so that's why he got Jake Gyllenhaal, that's why he got Mark Ruffalo. And actually it's why he got Anthony Edwards too, because he was neighbors with him. Fincher was neighbors with Anthony Edwards, and he thought that character, the cop that he played, needed to be a genuinely good man. Like, no one had any doubt about him or his motivations. It was just, he's a good man and a good cop and somebody you'd want to be around. He's like, I know that guy. That's Anthony Edwards. And so he went and got him.
Well, it's a good thing that he didn't try to, talk to Taylor Swift about Jake Gyllenhaal. So, because she doesn't like him too much.
I didn't know that.
The rumor is that they dated briefly, and like one of her I mean, all of her songs are about guys that realized, I don't know, that they didn't want to be in relationships with her. And apparently one of the songs is about Gyllenhaal. So
that's funny.
I told you to block BuzzFeed on your phone.
I blocked BuzzFeed. However, TMZ, I have the text alerts set up.
Okay.
So, yeah.
John?
Yes.
Where do you see David Fincher in this film?
Oh, that question. I honestly would say that where I see Fincher is just the, if I were to point to a specific scene where I can point to it and say, that's a Fincher film, I would actually point to the scene where they interrogate Alan in whatever, on his work. Yeah, in the lunchroom. Mm-hmm. And just the way that the camera spends the time and where it's positioned to get everybody's reactions and the lighting, everything. Like, I look at that looks like a David Fincher scene to me. Though the way that the colors wash, the way that the camera is set, everything about that looks. If I'd never seen this movie and you play that scene, I say, "Oh, David Fincher did that." Mm-hmm. That's where I see him.
Tristan?
From the first time I saw it, like, it was the first scene. It's just everything about it. The underexposed lighting, the way that you can tell it's digital from right away, the camera angles of the close-ups in the car, the establishing shots, repeating himself very minimally for those shots. But if I was like John, if I was to point to a scene or a shot even later in the film, it would probably be the CGI taxi going through downtown San Francisco, where the camera is locked in on the taxi. It's locked in. There's no drift. They're not trying to do cinema verite where they're like zooming in real quick and focusing, or like there's some lag because it was a helicopter shot. No, it was boom. It was artificial. It was 100% artificial, but it didn't take you out of it because it was so freaking cool. That was Fincher. Mm-hmm. They're like, no, let's lock in the camera. We're not pretending here. This is, we're not pretending that there's some dude hanging out of a helicopter getting that shot. Let's just make it as precise as possible. And that's exactly what Fincher is. And it's there's so many moments like that in this movie where they're just, he's the master of invisible CGI, and he's pushing the limits here, and he's testing what it can do. And that scene after the taxi killing, where Mark Ruffalo and Anthony Edwards, where we see them for the first time, that was 90% green screen. That scene. And it's, had complete sky replacement, and because they wanted to shoot on the actual corner of Cherry and Washington, but the neighbors were like, no, go screw yourself. And so he just built it in Los Angeles and then put up green screen. And there's a few shots where you can really tell, but most of the time you can't. And it's just so great. So great.
I don't think I noticed that. I'm so captivated with the movie that I don't notice a lot of that. You mentioned the taxi scene. Yes, that's it. When I see that scene, though, I see the influence of other directors on Fincher with that. And while that's a very Fincher shot, when I see that, I think of Citizen Kane, right? With the very beginning of Citizen Kane, when that window is in the exact same spot, like right after the credits there, and it zooms in, and then it zooms in, and then it zooms in. But the window is in the same spot on the frame every single time. And that's what we've got going on here with this shot, because the taxi doesn't stay the same size. He has these fade dissolves into a closer shot of the cab, but it still stays in the exact same spot of the frame. And, when the car switches lanes, the camera turns with it to keep the car proportioned, but it's not turning a lot. So I see Orson Welles' influence on Fincher's career when I see that shot.
Interesting. Because I was actually going to ask you, Brandon, with the fact that Fincher is, in a sense, a lot like Hitchcock, where it doesn't matter what his source material is. It's a David Fincher film. And even when he is adapting a book, it's a David Fincher film. Do you see any sort of Hitchcock influence coming through in something like this, which is basically, like a suspense crime drama sort of thing.
In this one, I don't, not so much. Like this one, I think pure through and through is Fincher because of the pacing and the dedication that he has to get everything just right. Like you mentioned, the trees, right? So I guess I would have to say that would be a Hitchcock thing. Like Hitchcock would take cinema to these weird locations, and he would also build those locations on sets. Right. If you look at, I think it's Sabotage or Saboteur, the one where they're on the Statue of Liberty, like that was built in a studio, like the face of Mount Rushmore in North by Northwest, like that was built in a studio, that portion of it. Right. And so Hitchcock was all about, let's get to these crazy places, but I'm not going anywhere to do this. I'm just going to be sitting right here. Fincher does that because of the control that he wants to have. Right, he's doing the same thing, but in my opinion, for different reasons. And with what Tristan said, because I didn't realize that about green screen on some of these street corners where he wanted to go, but they wouldn't let him. That would be an example there, where he's like, I want this, I can't get it out there, so I have to do it here. And I do it here because I want that control.
Mm-hmm. I mean, in a sense, that fact that he had to create the location digitally seems, you could make the argument, works better because of the fact that it invariably would have changed over the decades in some way. He would have had to do stuff to the buildings and stuff like that. And when you try to do that, like it always seems like just a better decision to just say, okay, you know what, let's just green screen it because at least everything will look consistent, as opposed to this building looks exactly the way that it was, and I'm trying to match this building next to it to old reference photographs, but there's no way that those two things together are going to completely come off right to the eye.
See, for me, like I prefer things like matte paintings. I love matte paintings in film. And I've never really appreciated exactly what a good matte painting can do, other than I like matte paintings more than I like CGI, and so for me with Star Wars, I always go to the prequels and be like, I wish that they would have used more matte paintings rather than CG. But recently, I actually just finished going through all the bonus features for the 9-disc Blu-ray set, not the new one, but the first release for Star Wars. And just seeing how big a matte painting was for some of those shots, like Darth Vader going up the walkway on the, what is it? I think it's the Executor or whatever his big ship is, and just seeing how all of that is matte painting. And even somebody like Hitchcock, watching the bonus features for Rebecca, he would film the stage and he'd film like the hallways of Manderley, but then that whole top part would be a matte painting. Or he would film a model of Manderley from the outside, and on top of the model, he would put another matte painting to make it look even bigger, So, like, so he could have done that with the streets of San Francisco, is what I'm saying. He could have filmed the street and still had a matte painting, or even digitally in this day and age, which he would have done digitally, of recreating the skyscape to make it look real. Yeah. But because they wouldn't let him go there, he recreated it completely on a stage rather than going to some other corner.
Yeah, but I mean, either way, it's a matte painting. It's just done in a computer now instead of, having Harrison Ellenshaw spend 12 hours a day for 6 months painting, a reactor shaft or something like that.
Right.
So,
yeah. I mean, either way, it's fake.
Yes. But so he could have done that on location. He could have picked a different street corner, or even if he would have had permission to do that, he just would have change the background digitally. And I kind of went on a tangent. I'm not belittling digital. I don't even know why I brought up matte paintings too much. I think I just went on a random tangent, and I apologize. So, but he could have done it. He could have done some type of a digital matte painting to change the landscape, to bring it back to 1970s.
Of course, but what I'm saying is that it winds up looking more consistent if you say, okay, you know what, we can get any asphalt street anywhere in America with a sidewalk, and then we'll just put a bunch of green screen across the street. You're going to get a more consistent effect than trying to extend real buildings. So that's all I was saying.
And in 2007, we were finally getting to the point where motion tracking was getting easier and easier for replacement. Because if you notice, you know, like David Fincher, he keeps it on the sticks. He keeps it on the tripod a lot of the time. Like, I shouldn't say, I mean, oftentimes he locks it down, but he also has a dolly shot or a tracking shot. It's very smooth and method. He very rarely uses, you know, like a handy cam or shaky cam or anything like that. But with this scene on Washington and Cherry, he, like, when we first see the cops, it's very active, it's very kinetic, it's shaky, it's documentary film style. He usually only does it about once per film. And it's funny that he chose that moment to do it, being surrounded by green screen, because that makes motion tracking that much harder when you're not locked down or you're in a dolly or a zoom or something like that. And yeah, I just think it's once again, it's Fincher pushing the boundaries. It's Fincher, like Brandon. Yeah, if he was on that street corner, he would have made it work with a digital extension. And John, you know, like, just like you said, like, even because he wasn't on the street, he was able to keep it more consistent with other things because he had more control over it. And like, by the time we got in 2007, Fincher actually said that he found it was easier to just digitally replace satellite dishes than it was to go up and take them down. Like, that we're getting to that point in filmmaking where when we say we can fix it in post, he actually means it. And I want to ask you guys, since we were talking about other directors and other movies and everything like that, Fincher has said that his biggest influence on Zodiac is All the President's Men.
I've never seen it.
Neither have I.
Well, I almost swore. Well, damn. Like, that goes down. That conversation point goes down the tubes.
And I will say that is a swear, Tristan. So there you go.
Yes, I've seen it. It's All the President's Men.
Oh, Brandon, we're the uncouth ones. Sorry.
We're are the uncouth ones.
We're in the presence of the great couth Tristan Riddell. Sorry.
It's in the top 100 of AFI. It's
top 100 lists of everything, okay? I haven't tried the top 100. Oh. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Yeah, well, did AFI watch all the bad movies I've seen on Amazon Prime? No, they did not.
Did AFI watch The Pest?
That is your own dang fault, John. Okay? Not a week goes by where you're just like, I just watched a half-star movie. Why am I doing this to myself? And then, like an addict, you like wrap the belt around your arm and then just shoot up again and just put Amazon Prime on random.
But that is because once you start sampling Hicksploitation movies, boy, it's hard to stop. Those are something special. Don't judge me.
I'm judging you hard.
So adding to my point, though, I think it is interesting that I see this shot and I really see the influence of Wells on it, considering what we're leading up to with this podcast. So,
hey, all right.
That's a really fair point.
Citizen Kane and whatnot. So, I think that's probably an influential film for him. So,
now before we wrap up, because I feel like we're rounding third, Robert Downey Jr. He this was his first and last David Fincher film. I stop me if you guys have heard this story, because this is a very this anecdote is very, very widely known. So because this was Fincher's first digital film, as we've talked about many times through the course of this podcast, you know, like Edward Norton has said, like Edward Norton and Mark Ruffalo were having a conversation one time. And Edward Norton's like, he's like, yeah, when I was shooting with Fincher, he was still on film. And so we would do like 30 takes max. And Mark Ruffalo's like, yeah, we're on digital now. So it was like more like 80 or 90 takes. And Mark Ruffalo was talking about how, like, once he understood what Fincher was doing, it made the 80 takes okay. He's like, this is my job. This is why I'm here. I'm just trying to like give Fincher his vision. And because he said like, he told a story about how his first day on filming, he was on his 80th take and Fincher stopped and Fincher's walking right towards him. He's like, oh God, I'm going to get fired. Like, why are we why am I doing this many takes? I'm clearly not giving him what he wants. He's going to find out I'm a schmuck. And then he goes past Mark Ruffalo, goes up to an extra, moves the extra 2 inches, and then walks past Mark Ruffalo again, pats him on the back and keeps going and gets behind the camera and he goes, action. And so that's when Mark Ruffalo realizes that Fincher is looking at everything. He is looking at everything. And he says that Ruffalo was like, it's our job to start working in unison. The extras, the actors, the cameramen, the like the production designers, everybody, like he's just waiting for all of us, him speaking, all of us to work in tandem to finally get to the point, to finally get to the shot that he wants. That's why he does 80 takes. And so this leads me to Robert Downey Jr. Robert Downey Jr. This was his first experience shooting on digital and hated it because he never got any downtime. He actually had to show up and work. And he had to do take after take after take, hour after hour after hour, because on digital, all you have to do is like load up another hard drive or hook up another cable. You don't have to, like when you're shooting on film, you have to take out the canister, load it up, and it takes time to set up the camera again. Fincher just keep going and going and going. So Downey would pee in mason jars and then leave them around set.
Oh, man.
In protest. Because he's like, I don't even have enough time to go to the bathroom. And that was why he's never worked with Fincher again.
I have not heard that story.
I had never heard that story before, but this movie, this is right before Iron Man, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And isn't this when Downey is still trying to work his way back into the good graces of Hollywood after flaming out? So I can only imagine that's so, I mean, it's so interesting in the context of this is a guy who has to be hazed a little bit. I guess you could say he should expect a little bit of difficult working conditions because people are going to be keeping a really close eye on him to make sure he doesn't fall off the wagon, as it were. Mm-hmm. And so it seems to me that at this point, and I don't want this to come across the wrong way, but he should have been maybe a little more grateful to have somebody who wanted to work with him that much, as opposed to saying, I'm an actor. And it's like, well, actually, you're a convicted felon at this point, and everybody's giving you a second shot. So maybe cool it a little bit, because everybody else is doing 80 takes too, including the extra who doesn't even get a screen credit, you jerk.
Right. Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, one last question. Now, Robert Downey gives a definite tonality to Paul Avery. Like, it's pretty much Robert Downey does Paul Avery. You know, like it's not so much Paul Avery. Fincher's first choice was Daniel Craig.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine how different that role would have been?
Yes.
With Daniel Craig? Like, it wouldn't have been as jokey. It wouldn't have been the whole, like, I'll be a smartass as I spiral down the drain. I think that spiral down the drain would have been much more, what's the word I'm looking for? Yes,
restrained.
Painful. It would have been much more, I think, realistic isn't the right word, but less jokey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would have been less Robert Downey Jr. Yeah,
sure. I think that's the only way that I can put it. It's Robert Downey Jr. It's kind of like Hugh Grant. Like when you go see a Hugh Grant movie, it's a Hugh Grant movie. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
You know, when you see a Robert Downey Jr. movie, you're going to see Robert Downey Jr.
Yes.
I didn't know that story about him, and I didn't know that about Daniel Craig either. That's really neat. Cool. John, anything else we haven't talked about that you would like to address before we tie the bow on this film?
No, outside of saying that I think that because I stole this bit from Mike Schindler, so I will say that my ideal double feature with this film would either be American Gangster or Michael Mann's Manhunter. I think that that would be a great double feature with this.
Manhunter would be a good choice.
I've never seen that film.
What?
Oh, it's a good one.
What, you're giving me nonsense about All the President's Men and you haven't seen Manhunter?
Really?
Oh, come on.
Really? You want to go toe to toe on this? All the President's Men versus Manhunter? Really?
Oh, please. Manhunter will crush All the President's Men and have enough energy left over for it to spawn a franchise that it didn't mean to.
Well, you got a Manhunter crossover with this film too, with Brian Cox, right?
That's true. That's very, very true. Who would have played Hannibal Lecter? He would have played Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs, except he had a standing rule back then that he wouldn't do sequels. So there you go.
Well, that was stupid.
Awesome. Excellent. Tristan, what do you give this movie out of 5 newspaper clippings?
I give 4 carefully clipped newspaper clippings that I put on the board to annoy my wife and 3 children.
John Mills, how many out of 5 children are you working on this project with when you're trying to solve the murder of the Zodiac? Do you have all 5 with you?
I got to go with 5. I really do.
All 5, yeah.
I adore this film.
Is this your favorite Fincher film?
Man, it's going to get tiring trying to re-rank them every time. My heart still wants me to go to The Game, but this is an absolute stunning masterwork, I think. And it's kind of disgusting how many 5-star films David Fincher has, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But hey.
She should be ashamed of himself. When's he going to make a stinker?
Gosh darn it, suck like the rest of us. Come on.
Yep, I give this one 5 stars too. So this has been a lot of fun. Listeners, thank you so much for joining us today, for listening to this. We really appreciate it. If you could do us a favor, give us a rating and a review in iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. You can send us a note, contact the Nerd Party. Tristan, what's the email address? You got a general one?
What you could do is you can go to thenerdparty.com/contact, select House of Fincher, and fill out the form. It'll send us an email right to our doorstep. You can also find us on Twitter at Join Nerd Party. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Nerd Party. You can contact us so many different ways and check us out. And as always, please, please, please go to thenerdparty.com and check out our other shows. We have so many other shows coming at you. We got Star Trek, Star Wars, Babylon 5, movies, indie movies, mainstream movies, Doctor Who stuff. It's all over the place. And so we're giving you content every single day of the week. Something for everyone, even for grandma and the kiddies.
John, where can people find you when you're not handwriting movie posters?
Well, you can find me as Kessel Junkie online. Pay attention to how I write the K in KESSELJUNKIE. And you can, of course, go ahead and find me on Letterboxd. It's usually where I'm writing pithy reviews of movies I shouldn't be watching.
Half-star films on Amazon Prime.
You know what? Gosh darn it, they're worth it. It's good. It makes me feel like I accomplished something because somebody else goofed up worse than I did that day. But you can also find me here on the network co-hosting Aggressive Negotiations, a Star Wars podcast with Matthew Rushing, which is a whole lot of fun, so please check it out.
Tristan, where can people find you when you're not sitting there making bad Star Trek episodes and then giving legal advice to serial killers over the telephone?
I love Brian Cox in that role. He's like, it's like, what did he call Sam? He's like, Sam. He always like stress. He's like, Sam, can we? I don't think they'd give him the chair. Do you? No, the gas chamber. No, I think. Like, would you like me to make a phone call, Sam? You can find me all over the interwebs under the Insane Robin. You can find me on Twitter and Letterboxd. That's the main places you can find me. And you can also find me on this network with 2 archive shows, Nerd Nuptial and Punch It, writing in Star Trek. Both very good. Very, very good, if I do say so myself. Brandon, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Brandon Matella. You can find me over on Trek FM with a show called The Line, which is all about Star Trek Picard. Over on the United Federation of Podcast Network, I have a show called Franchise Fatigue with my friend Zach, and we are covering all sorts of movies, remakes, and sequels. And also, I have a Hitchcock podcast called Good Evening, an Alfred Hitchcock podcast. That's over on the Fandom Podcast Network, and it's a lot of fun. You should check it out. Well, that's all we got for you this week. Until next week, when, we're all going to be getting a little bit younger with The Curious Case of Benjamin Button.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.